missed you, Mike. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I missed you too. It's been a while since we've done a show together. I know we've both been busy. Everyone has lives, as you know, but I know we're going to get back to it. And everyone, welcome to our new show. It's Patriots Nation, and Tracy and I plan on getting together every week to bring you two or three topics and maybe rant a little bit on something that either bothered us or something that was on our mind during the election cycle and all things MAGA. So today, some of our topics we were talking about earlier before the show was talking a little bit about what's going on with the murder of Kashoggi, the reporter, so-called reporter, Liz Warren, and what's going on with AKA Pocahontas, and some of our midterm predictions, thoughts, just feel, what is on our conscience regarding who to vote for on the ballot and all those things for the midterms upcoming. So, starting with Kashoggi. So, Tracy, right now, there's been a murder of what they called a reporter. This reporter lived in the U.S., also is from Saudi Arabia, and has many ties that are deep. Now, taking away those ties, people view him as just a reporter, and they're up in arms over a murder. And the murder is quite devastating. It includes dismembering of fingers and a beheading. I'm sure you heard some of that, right?
I did. I don't know what to make of this. I really don't. It makes sense that if he wasn't truly a reporter and was a spy, because he does have ties to the Muslim Brotherhood. If you look at his journalistic work, it is very sympathetic to the Muslim Brotherhood. It makes sense he could be a spy, and maybe they wanted to interrogate him and it went wrong, it went bad. That makes sense to me. But what I don't get is Mohammed bin Salman and Saudi Arabia don't want to risk the relationship they have with us by intentionally luring this guy there to murder him. Right now they're looking at this economic resurgence in Saudi Arabia, and they want a lot of Western business in there. And they know that Donald Trump and his son-in-law Jared Kushner, because they're pretty close, they have a really nice friendship. They know that that's the way to economic prosperity, and I can't see Mohammed bin Salman risking that on this dirtbag. I really can't see it. And I call him a dirtbag just because of what I'm hearing about him. He wasn't the nice, meek reporter that the media, even in this country, is making him out to be.
In fact, you're right. They're defending him to the point of saying, President Trump should already say he's guilty. And that we've already gone through that with Kavanaugh, where you're guilty until proven innocent. And we know that doesn't work. And we know President Trump doesn't put up with that. But if you don't mind, I want to go back just a little bit to May of 17. So in May of 2017, Jared Kushner went 1 week ahead of President Trump to help install the new regime there, which was basically a takeover of Talal and moving on to bin Salman. And there was a lot of people who were imprisoned. Some people died during this process that went unreported. Now, according to all the people involved, this reporter, aka reporter, was also an undercover operative and worked strategically for Talal and did some very nefarious things and research, opposition research, and it wasn't politically based. With that said, when the new regime was installed, a lot of things were promised, Tracy. A few things like this. Number one, within the next 2 decades, they will no longer be dependent on oil. They asked President Trump to help build an economy of scale with manufacturing and everything else to leave the dependency of oil. Now, that's a long time coming because their whole lives have been dependent on oil, and they're all billionaires. I know you know that. Mm-hmm. And a ton of princes are billionaires there at a minimum. So we have that at stake, which are hundreds of billions of dollars into the future. And they asked President Trump to help architect it, design it, and help implement it where they can build a new GDP based on everything but oil. That is huge. With that comes arms sales and other things to protect their own nation one day, because we've been doing the protection of the Saudis for I can't even remember how long. Now, there's one more piece. We also asked them a few things. We said, A, you must stand up, get in front of the camera, and declare Israel a free and Jewish state. They did that. They also funded Israel $12 billion to target Hezbollah, Hamas, and Iran at one point. That's another piece. So, which is a big deal. And also to start taking steps in having a free society where women would be equal. And as you noticed, in the last 6 months in June, women were allowed to drive. Now, those things have come true so far, and the architect of the new land, non-dependent on oil, will not begin for a few years. So you can understand the hundreds of billions, if not trillions, over a couple decades that are at stake at this point. And with that said, all of a sudden, Tracy, I saw people defending this reporter, coming out and saying President Trump immediately should put sanctions on that were quite harsh on someone, like you just said, who are their friends. And when I say friends, President Trump gets close with people, and so does Jared Kushner, and I think they've become pretty close in the process. So you can see how much is at stake and why President Trump took a step back to judge this in a more free way, especially after the Kavanaugh situation.
Wow, you're really smart. That all came from up in here.
It did. It all came from upstairs.
Wow, you're a really smart guy. You know what? I just don't. Saudi Arabia is not exactly our friend. They're not. I mean, let's put it that way, like from the history of us in Saudi Arabia. And neither is Turkey, even though they're our ally as well. If we were to go in and just rush to judgment, and I have to appreciate President Trump's slow approach here, because we can't take Turkey at face value for what they're telling us. We need to see this evidence. We need to have people of our own go in there and investigate. But I just, if we rush to judgment, and I always look at the Democrat reaction and the mainstream media reaction, they want us to rush to judgment, pull the arms deal that we have with them. So that gives me pause right there. Then Iran could be empowered because you would have Russia and China step into the mix, wouldn't they? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. You are so good at all of this foreign policy and diplomacy that's going on. And I don't know what to make of all of this. So I'm learning from you, just like everybody else is learning from you. But from what I understand, this would be bad if we rush to judgment and go against Saudi Arabia, because wouldn't Iran become empowered?
They would. And, in fact, from what you just said, I don't know if you heard this, but Mike Pompeo went over there right away, met with Mohammed bin Salman, they call him MBS. Mm-hmm. And if you notice, they smiled for the cameras. And immediately people took issue that Mike Pompeo even smiled. Now, you know that there's pomp and circumstance that come to meeting foreign dignitaries. And in this case, we've befriended them. And to go in with an assumption of guilt would really put us in a really bad position. So what you said is correct. It would open up the door for the Russias, the Irans. And by the way, you mentioned Turkey, and I didn't even get a chance to make a comment on that, but I have more issue with Turkey than I have with Saudi Arabia, and here's why. They gave safe haven to ISIS, safe passage to ISIS, let them pass through with all their weapons to continue murdering, and Turkey has a very devastating army. And when Erdogan, I say it wrong almost every time, took over, he went door to door, basically, not physically, and if you didn't quote the Quran, you were imprisoned and your house was stolen. So I have more issue with Turkey than I do with anyone else, and I'm not afraid of Saudi because we defend them, Tracy.
Can I ask you a question, Mike? Not to interrupt, but do you think that this has something to do with us moving the embassy in Israel to Jerusalem?
Well, I can say that Saudi was on board. Part of the broker deal was that they would agree to fund Israel, and the reason they're funding Israel, of course, is to target Iran. So strategically, on the map of Stratego, it was a good move for Saudi to say yes to this. Did they do it with their arms tied behind their back? I don't think so. Did they do it because a new regime took over and wanted new ways and women to drive and be more progressive? I think so. So I don't know if it has a lot to do with that because they're trying to befriend Netanyahu. And they wouldn't want to blow that either, Tracy. They have so much at stake right now with Israel, with us, with Iran potentially coming back over in that area. And they really have the most land, aka oil, to protect that's left in the region.
But do you think Turkey has a vested interest in severing our relationship? Does it have something to do with that arms deal?
I would say yes, because Turkey does not want us to make Saudi stronger. Of course. Also, Turkey does not love Israel, so that probably could be the point of contention with Israel, and anything to ruin this relationship. And so I would more believe that Turkey and the former regime, including Talal, on purpose somehow made sure that this reporter, whatever you want to call him, was killed to make the new bin Salman look bad, so President Trump would look bad in the process and have to make a very tough decision, and knowing the midterms are coming up, even worse.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I always found the timing of this suspicious.
Very suspicious. And the way he was murdered, and the details. In fact, they're actually questioning Turkey. So Turkey says they have intel on this. How is it convenient that Turkey would have so much intel on what's going on when technically none of their operatives should have been involved? So how would they have some type of intel that we don't know about?
Spy operation, perhaps?
Yeah, maybe a spy operation. They're very resourceful, and I got to tell you, their army is one of the top 5 ready, destructive armies that no one talks about. They are ready to rock with anybody in Turkey. If you do research on the Turkish military.
Yeah, I feel like what President Trump is doing and our administration is doing is the right play. Slow walk it, don't rush to judgment. And then, and the mainstream media is just gonna just keep building this up and building this up and building this up. And they're not going to talk about the migrant caravan that's making its way up to our border, that's being paid to do this just in time for midterms. They're not going to talk about this. They're going to push this issue. And then when the migrant caravan gets up here, it's going to be, oh, see, President Trump treats these people horribly. He separates families. It's going to be the old recycled plot lines again and again.
It is, and I'm glad you brought that up, not so much to segue, because it really wasn't one of our topics, but what's very unique, what I love, is the incoming new president of Mexico has already agreed to a border force program for President Trump to prevent things like this, and is already dispensing some military to help confront it prior, and is telling President Trump they're on the ready to help possibly prevent it. And we might take away funding from Guatemala and from Honduras if these actions continue. And we know who's behind all this. You're right. And so this disruption, Tracy, is all part of a great disruption to try to interrupt our process while we're gaining steam. And as you can tell, you have to admit, we've been on quite the roll.
Oh my goodness, winning. I'm not sick of it yet, Mr. President. But there's a big story out today that a lot of people are just beginning to hear about. And there is a virus that's striking children in the United States. I know it's here in New York. It's here where I live. And children as young as 4 are getting this polio-like illness. And no one ever talks. Now, they're saying, the CDC is saying, we don't know how it's transmitted. I just find it a little suspicious that we have all of these caravans coming into our country and all of these illnesses that we really haven't seen before just mysteriously are starting to breed. So I have to say, not only just because we can't afford to house all these illegal immigrants, but it's a health concern too. Now, I'm not saying that these immigrants brought this pestilence here, but it's a distinct possibility that they may have brought it up from their country. So I think President Trump, once again, playing it very well by threatening to cut the aid. Why are we basically funding these crooked governments that are stealing this money? They're not using this money to put into their own countries and to make their life better for their citizens so that they stay there. They're not doing that. These people are being paid by the powers that be, George Soros, to come up here in these caravans and make trouble for us. So, President Trump, he's playing both of these right. There comes a time when you have to say enough is enough. The Democrats are the party of open borders, of socialism, of foreign countries. They are not the party of Americans. And right now, not for nothing, if you are a smart Democrat in office, we have 7.1 million unfilled jobs. We need some immigrants to come in here and fill these jobs because we don't have enough people to take them. So they really could make a deal if they wanted to, but they don't want to. They never want to solve this problem. They want to run on it every 2 years.
There's more money to keep the problem going. You're absolutely right. And I'm glad you brought up the polio type or similar issue, or at least the signs of polio. So under Barack Hussein Obama's rule of terror, or reign of terror, they brought in massive amounts of migrants and in many ways refugees. Now, a lot of these refugees under the Khan, Mr. Khan, who was an attorney here and also at the DNC convention, Khan family, He was
Yes.
responsible for making these people citizens in 30 days. So they actually became citizens. They were never health checked. With that said, we had 2 new strains of tuberculosis in 2013 that were unidentified. We did not have the antibodies or anything to combat it. We had many new forms of the flu we haven't seen before. So you are correct. Were things brought in here that were not checked? Yes. So we don't do a good job of that. And it brought me back to the old days of when my great-grandparents come through Ellis Island, they were quarantined.
That's
Then
right.
after the quarantine, during the quarantine, they would learn the language. And then they went out and started working multiple jobs. So we didn't do those things. So what you said is highly probable. I can't prove it, but I would tell you it's highly probable. Percentages would tell me that somehow new strains of something were brought here and it's being passed around, and we won't know how to fight it until it's a bit too late.
It's a health crisis. We have
Yes.
so many mutant germs right now. I just read a report. It's not really related to the immigration issue, but for the first time since they've been keeping records, the numbers of sexually transmitted infections is at an epidemic level. It's at a health crisis level, and we have strains of gonorrhea that are resistant to antibiotics. There are only 2 antibiotics left that are curing this mutant strain of this disease. So I'm not saying that's related to immigration. It could be. It could be, non compliance to medication. I have no idea. But we have enough problems in this country without other problems being brought in.
You are correct. And speaking of problems, I know we can segue into another problem, but it could be another blessing for the conservative party here, our party, the America's Party, the party of Trump, if we take it the right way. But we've all seen what Liz Warren has doubled down on, and whoever's advising her, she made a horrible mistake. And it's backfired to the epic proportion of almost kicking her out of the 2020 election run. And what were your first thoughts when you saw her announcement of that, knowing what would come next? Not just the memes. By the way, the most memes I've probably ever seen in the shortest span ever. But what were your first thoughts?
My first thoughts are, what is she doing? Who advised her that this was a good idea? Because I'm sorry, they must be fired by now. Who convinced her that this was a good idea? 19 days away from the midterms, and you do this to prove that you're 1,024th, possibly a Peruvian, not even Native American. Basically, Elizabeth Warren proved she's more white than I am. That's what she did.
True.
And that, yeah, and what this did was allow people to look into her background. Did you know that her great 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 grandfather, not only was he not a Cherokee,
Yes.
but he rounded up Indians
Yes.
for the Trail of Tears?
Yes. I read that whole story of what the father was responsible for on my show the other day, and it's actually quite embarrassing for her family lineage to find this out, for her to claim Indian status or Native American status and then find this out.
I felt like it was a birthday present. First, you have Hillary Clinton going on. They're not talking about midterms at all, mind you.
Right.
She goes on TV and she's saying how her husband is basically a saint, Saint Bill. And then you have Elizabeth Warren, who's getting dissed by the Cherokee Nation. I mean, it's not even my birthday yet. My birthday's like still some time away. So this was an October surprise, a self-inflicted wound that nobody saw coming, because it just shows you just how foolish. Not only do the Democrats have an identity politics problem, they have an identity crisis problem. You have Rachel Dolezal, she thinks she's black. Beto O'Rourke thinks he's Hispanic. And now you have Elizabeth Warren, that is not a Cherokee. She's Elizabeth Warren, so white.
Yes, I think, and there's someone, what's his name, thinks he fought in Vietnam. They have, yeah, right.
Oh, it's Sean King, too. He's another one.
Sean King. Yeah, all these wonderful stories that keep coming up, and yet they keep trying to demonize us. The gift that you're talking about that we've been given here, it goes even further because it's damaging the 2020 run. It's damaging the midterms, which is, obviously front and center, and it's becoming the story. So now we have people like Keith Ellison at the top, where his divorce records are unsealed today. He's looking like a multiple woman beater or abuser in some form. So at the top of the party, of the Democrat Party, we have racists and women beaters. And at the bottom, we have extreme socialism that's been endorsed by Barack Hussein Obama. He endorsed Ocasio Cortez. And so they are an epic free fall fracture with an epic, let's say, fissure of an earthquake. And they have an identity crisis, like you just said. And on top of that, they have no platform. So their platform is they stand against us. Our platform is look at our resume of success, and here's our plans for the next 6 years as well. And it looks wonderful, and here's the results it's proven so far. Can't be beat. And so we stand for something, they stand against us. And that's all I've seen so far coming into the midterms.
And she's never going to get away from it, Mike. Like, this is going to haunt her. Her presidential run ended the day that she releases. She's never going to get in front of this. And, what she should have done was, and I'll tell you, I did my 23andMe DNA last year. I got it for my birthday. Mm-hmm. And I was always told that I was partially French, that there was this French person in our family. And when I got the DNA back, I was not French at all. Nothing came back. Mm-hmm. So why couldn't she have said, I was told these stories growing up that my great grandfather was a Cherokee, yada, yada. But it turns out maybe not so much. Maybe it was just like a nice story that was passed down, but it wasn't necessarily true. So because she profited off of this Cherokee narrative. Harvard profited off of this Cherokee narrative because remember, she was a woman of color, according to them. So she should have just kind of did a mea culpa. Then it would have been left in the past. No one would have talked about it again. And she actually would have looked human. And nobody would have looked into her background further to find out all of her little skeletons in the closet.
You're right. We all play the telephone game. We all pass around a message to each other through 10 people. And by the time it gets to the 10th person, it doesn't sound like the way the original person sent the message. And right. That's exactly what you said. She could have saved the day by just saying, it could have been an old wives' tale. But the bottom line was, I was told that I may have some heritage in this area, and would have been just fine, because you know what? You said you may have had some French, and I may have had some German, and then it may have had this, and it may be wrong, and you found out that it was wrong. And so you're absolutely right. She should have taken that approach. She was misadvised. I don't even know if she was advised. I think she thought she was taking this to the hoop for a dunked basketball and completely missed everything. I think she was just running with it.
Well, somebody's going to be on the unemployment line if they did advise her to do this. And by the way, they did not, and I know you brought this up on your show, they did not just test Native American. They're using Peruvian and South American Indian lineage in the test as well. So right. The Cherokee Nation coming out against her was just a gift that we never saw coming. So you see Democrats running away from Liz Warren in droves. She would have cornered that progressive nut job part of the party if she were not to do this in 2020. She would have really had a leg up on her competition, because Bernie Sanders, let's face it, as beloved as he is in that party, still, he's too old to run for president. He just is.
You're right. And also, back to the narrative, what she said earlier, you mentioned Hillary, and I thought, well, Hillary just got done in an interview, and when they brought up the intern, she goes, she's an adult. Basically, like she had a chance one more time. I don't know how many chances we've given her here. It may even be 50 or 60. And instead of just doing the right thing and admit it, she demonized the women that were either the rape victims or the other people involved with Bill. She demonized them and broke them financially. And then she just made it okay that she was an intern that was an adult and not taken advantage of by someone of massive power, or of the most power the world has to offer.
I mean, let's look at it this way. I'm a nice Christian girl. I would never be with a married man, never been with a married man. It's not even an option for me in my mind and my moral fiber. This girl is 22, and the president of the United States is hitting on you. That's flattering. Okay, to any woman, that's flattering. And if you are somebody that is susceptible to that, and you might be thinking, okay, well, if I do this, it could open the doors to my political future, and I could get any job I want, because now I do have something to lord over this very powerful man's head. So, Hillary could have said, I understand the power play at work, but she was 22. She was an adult. There's a way to phrase things. But what does Hillary know? She's probably like intoxicated. Did you see her crash the van
I
in New
did.
Jersey the other night? That has to make they have to make that into a GIF. But if you look at the damage that has been done to the Democrat Party, a lot of it is self-inflicted. I mean, you can't take this unbelievable economy away from Trump because we were told for so many years under Barack Obama that the slow growing economy was the new normal. And that's just the way it's going to be from now on out. And then Trump takes power, and we have the most competitive, quickly growing economy in the whole entire world now. This is the first time in over a decade that that's happened. So, you put the self-inflicted wounds it's the economy stupid together. And man, I'm very, very excited to see what's in store in less than 3 weeks for the midterm election.
You're right. We didn't even cause these things. This isn't even our doing. We didn't even implement any type of strategy here.
No.
This was all on their own. In fact, the Cherokee Nation said to claim any casino money, you need to be 1/16th minimum Native American. So she's way off that anyway, so she can't claim that. But everything you just discussed, we didn't do. In fact, we had one more gift. We had the walkawaymarch.com. We had the walkaway people. 350,000 people on their own recognizance did some research and found out what their party was really about and left. There is no such animal for the Conservative Party to do a walk away and leave under the same recognizance. So we have that. We have these gifts keep on coming, and we deserve them for the fact that we've created almost 12 trillion in wealth. Massive tax cuts, brought in the largest tax base in American history, even with the raise of interest rates and without repatriating $4 trillion yet. We have goodness to come that could last 6 years plus. And I can see, Tracy, a few more Supreme Court picks that should go a lot faster.
Oh, I hope so. And I can tell you this, I know this for a fact, and I won't tell you how I know this, that President Trump is well aware that we are doing the walkaway march. I don't know if he's going to show up to it. I haven't heard that, but President Trump regards the walkaway movement as one of the most important movements of a lifetime. And he realizes and recognizes how important it is because it gives people that were liberal a home, because there are people that are gay, there are people that are minority, they're afraid to ruffle feathers, they're afraid they're not going to have friends, they're going to be alone, they're going to be an island all unto themselves, they're not going to have any support. But just like Brendan Struck found out, we are a very welcoming community of people. We just want to MAGA and have a good time and enjoy the prosperity and opportunities that we have. It would be really cool, though, POTUS, if you showed up on October 27th.
It would. That would make it all right there, because I know that the fundraising's been going well. There's a lot to make up for, but it's been on a grassroots level with a ton of people giving their time that all have careers. And the amount of work that everyone's put in that I've seen and kept the attitude flowing in a beautiful way and continues to bring, the MAGA piece to this. It's been just a really holistic thing to watch. It kind of metastasize into something so special that I'm glad he recognizes it. I know many other people of power recognize it and are making comments about it. They know the hashtag. And I think it's making, that's another gift to our party that we have to honor in a special way, because a lot of times we're known for fact-based conversation, and finally we have a list of accomplishments in the shortest span that's never been done, and no one could rival it and no one could bad talk it, so they demonize us instead and call us names and spit at people and throw things at people, crash trains, shoot guns, stab, and do all those other things, while we continue not to get in the mud with them on those things. And for that, we deserve the things you just said.
I can tell you, Mike, you can check it out. Think Progress did an article on Walkaway and the Walkaway March, and they accused all of us organizers of running a grifting operation. I can tell you right now, I'm not getting a dime. I paid $240 for my plane ticket. I paid $800 for a hotel room, and I paid 200 and some odd dollars to get a ticket to the gala. I'm not making a dime. I'm broke right now, and I just had to buy a new car. I mean, the struggle is real. So for Think Progress to dare say that anybody that is helping to put together this march is making money off of it and running a grifting operation, that is, and oh, by the way, they don't think anybody's going to show up to this march because we're just a bunch of Russian bots anyway. They never contacted Brandon or anybody else that's working very hard on this march or on the movement for their comments, thoughts, to rebut. And they said that they tried to contact us. They did not. They're lying. Gee, a left-wing outfit lying?
Exactly.
So you could check it out. Maybe you can, the audience can go and tell them on Twitter underneath that article exactly what they think of it.
It's pure demonization is what they do best. They do implement the Saul Alinsky tactics. And by the way, they've always been successful until now. They have been successful. And I've been on the back end seeing all this work. I participated in fundraising. We've brought in thousands. And I promised my audience that I would give 20 to 30 minutes of a motivational speech or consulting time to anyone who donates double or triple digits. And now I've done that 15 times over. And I owe a few people some special moments off camera, to do a special one-on-one session. And so I know the work that goes into it and how successful it's becoming. And I can tell you, everyone is putting in time they don't even have to make it work. So I'm very proud to say I've seen what you've done and many others associated with this. And it's a beautiful thing. And they're going to eat those words when they see the outcome of this. And again, I want the conservatives to honor this moment and get behind it, because they will never, ever get this gift again during a lifetime. This moment under President Trump, this walk away, doesn't come around again. This is it. So speaking of that, so we're heading towards the midterms, walking away towards the midterms. We're speaking about the midterms. So, Tracy, we have a few things. We have the Senate, we have the House, and we have some gubernatorial races. And we all have some thoughts about what's going to happen. We also have some polls that are typically incorrect. And if you don't mind, I can give you what all the polls combined mathematically equal as we talk right this second. And then you can give me your comments on that fresh. Is that all right?
I would love to hear it.
All right, so I'm going to start off first with the Senate. Right now, they're saying that the Senate, that the GOP has locked down 50 already, and the Dems have locked down 44, which leaves 6 at large. And right in front of me, I don't have the 6 listed, but of the 6, I already thought, and my prediction 3 months ago is we would end up with 53 or 54, which means 3 or 4 of the final 6. So starting with the Senate, what are your thoughts on what I just said? Do you think we've locked down 50? Do you think we're going to add to where we're currently at today?
Oh, we're definitely going to add. You can kiss McCaskill, seat goodbye. And, who's the other one that I'm thinking of? The other woman. Help me out.
The one in Arizona?
In Arizona. McSally's going to slaughter. That's cinema. Is a head case, and yes. I love how all of this is coming out against her now about her comments about the Taliban. Oh, you trying to join the Taliban? Yes. I forgive you. I mean, come on, how could you put that in the Senate? So the Senate, we're going to have a supermajority in the Senate for sure. I do believe people ask me all the time if I think that Manchin is going to keep a seat, and I do think Manchin is going to keep a seat. I have predicted, and I'm telling you, I really feel like he is going to become a Republican at some point. He's one of those like Bill Clinton-esque era Democrats that were moderate at the time, but now a moderate Democrat is really more like a moderate Republican is. So I feel like Joe is going to come to our side at some point, but I think that he does keep his seat. And a lot of people always tell me, on Twitter and elsewhere, remind people to vote. I don't like to remind people to vote, Mike. I like to tell them, think of what life would be like with Hillary Clinton at the helm and the Democrats at the helm. Remember Kavanaugh? You want more of that? Do you want to be accused of something that you didn't do and not have due process? That's what life is going to be like. Do you want your taxes to go up? So those kind of things. So the Senate, I believe, supermajority for us.
When you said Manchin, so 2 years ago I have recorded on my show, I have all my shows recorded, and I said Manchin is a Republican in Democrat clothing.
That's
And
right.
so, and I feel if and now he also has supported President Trump on some things, but he takes a lot of heat. So your prediction on the switch is possible. President Trump got the governor of West Virginia to change parties, as you know. So
That's
those things
right.
are possible, and he may even hold his seat because of the Kavanaugh vote. May just keep him right over that top. So
Slim
yeah,
margin.
yeah.
He's gonna retain it by slim margin.
Absolutely. All right. So I liked your comments there. That was good. We're in agreement on that. On the House, currently as it stands today, it says the GOP has 200 locked down and the Democrats have 205, which would leave, I believe, 30 at large, which would mean we need a minimum of 18 of the 30 at
Yeah,
that point. What are your
yeah,
thoughts on the House?
we're going to lose some seats, but we're going to retain power in the House. I don't believe and I don't buy any blue wave. I don't see in this economy, this is not a normal year. It's not a normal year, and Trump is not a normal president. There are people that may not like Trump's personality, but they like the extra money in their pocket. So yes, we are going to lose some seats. I think there's a seat in Maine that we're going to lose. I can't remember the people. I get confused with all the names, but I think that we're just going to lose a little bit. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the media is portraying, but that doesn't mean to be apathetic. As I tell people here in New York, which is a blue state, if every Republican keeps saying, "Oh, it's a liberal state, it doesn't matter anyway,"
Right.
what if you all went out and voted? Okay, but I am having a problem here in New York, a conscience crisis here, but we can get to that later.
So the media is doing their best, the opposition media, to make sure to remind everyone there's a blue wave and the Republicans have no chance. That includes Fox and CNN and MSNBC, and every network is saying that no matter where you go. They're saying they're tightening up. That's as much as they'll give us. They're tightening up. Now, if you and I look at all the realness going on, if you simply just look, take a couple snapshots, say, let's look at the last few rallies. 25,000 people show up waiting 3.5 to 4 miles in line, knowing one thing: they will not get in. They still show up. They have a great time. They hold each other's purses in line when they go to the bathroom. They're all laughing. They're all sharing food. And they know they're not going to get in, and they get a big screen treat on the outside. And they just know they want to be in the same airspace as the president who arrives at some point during this thing. The fact that that happens is like a rock star or the Beatles coming to America. And I think that's how it's being perceived. And so, Tracy, this is more than during the primary. This is something that, under my lifetime of studying all this, there's never been post-presidential rallies in this many that have had this many people knowing they're not going to get in, just wanting to be there.
There's nothing like a Trump rally. I can tell you, just from being to so many and seeing the president speak so many times, Trump people are the best people. Like you said, these are not what the media portrays them to be. These are families that come in. I see whole families, little children in red caps come out. I want to tell you this quick little story, though, that happened to a girl that I know today, and it relates to this. She was walking her dog over in Setauket, which is in Long Island. It's Lee Zeldin's district, and Lee Zeldin was out campaigning. She happened to put on her MAGA hat. She's got a pit bull. She said, "Oh, I want to go over and meet Lee Zeldin." Very nice guy, by the way. She goes up, and as she's going up, she gets accosted by a bunch of left-wing thugs. She said they were various ages, both male and female, and whatever gender they specify. And they surrounded her so that she couldn't get up to Lee Zeldin. And they tried to take off her hat in the park. And she said, "If you don't step off, you see my pit bull? I'm going to let go of the leash and we'll see what happens." And that was the only thing that got them away from her. This thuggish reaction from the left. We don't have to have one campaign commercial. They're doing it all for us. And it's examples like this, multiply that all over the United States, that's going to drive us out to vote. We're not apathetic this year. Kavanaugh and that debacle lit a fire under our butts. And I'm so happy that the Democrats misplayed it the way they did. And it's not something that wore off. It's actually fired me up more as time goes on, thinking what they did to this great man and his family.
You know what? And we're forgetting too about independents. Now, independents, regardless of which way they sway, no matter what, if you're a true independent and you base your decision on how things are going, you have almost no choice to vote with the conservative or towards the President Trump ballot, whoever that becomes, because 91% of America got a tax break. Regulations have been brought back to the 1960s, and so many things are for the better. There are many things you may dislike. You may dislike the approach, you may not like a tweet, and maybe that makes you cry. But the truth is, you can't deny that things are better. There's less talk about hating police. There's more talk about supporting veterans. There's less money being added to the deficit because of the things we're creating in wealth. And we haven't even hit our stride yet. So I think as an independent, they have their crisis of conscience is quite easy. Just look at the result. And if you're a true independent, you base your decision on results. Chances are you're going to vote in our direction. And we don't need you to become a Republican to do that. And for that, I think we've earned that vote this time, Tracy, without having to sell anything in a commercial. Like you said, it wrote itself. And also, that points towards the gubernatorial campaigns, where it shows that we have 23 states right now, and the Dems have 19, with 8 at large. And right now, we have a majority in governorships. And if we really were to retain that, we could really have the Supreme Court, both the House and the Senate, all of the lower courts, and of course, even the governorships, and have a true super majority for a very long time.
I'll tell you, Mike, Cuomo in my state is not a popular governor. He's not popular with Democrats. He's not popular with Republicans. He's only popular in a little progressive area in the city, because most of Long Island and most of upstate New York are red. And my county happened to go for Trump 56%. So we could get rid of him. This is the problem. Our GOP is just as bad as the Democrat Party. Our conservative party is just as bad as the Democrat Party. There's a lot of corruption here in New York. They put up a candidate, Mark Molinaro, for the GOP, but he was somewhat of a never Trumper. Now he's kind of come around because he has to, because Trump is quite popular in a lot of places in New York. But I'm having a crisis of conscience, because the Libertarian candidate, Larry Sharpe, is amazing. He is as MAGA can be. He wants New York to be completely successful. I have a big problem. Like, do I hold my nose and vote for Molinaro, who is a better shot than Larry Sharpe? I'm really wrestling with my conscience right now. So I am actually going to meet Mark Molinaro on Monday at an event, and I'm going to pick his brain and try to make my decision in that way.
Sure.
Larry Sharpe, man, if he was running as a Republican, he would destroy Cuomo in this state. He's great, this guy.
And that tends to split the vote, as you know,
Yes.
which is also another problem. Now,
That's
you
the
just
problem.
named this similar problem. I had Shiva on my show. You know Shiva.
Yes, yes, I love him.
He's going to get some gravitas now because of Warren. And Shiva has not been allowed on the debate stage because the places hosting the debate are all funding that party. So Harvard is one of them. So with that said, Shiva is an independent, and 80% of the people that live there are independents. So they have one of the largest independent bases. So he needs to get on the debate stage. So you're right. You might find a libertarian that has that much MAGA, like Shiva does, and yet may not have that gravitas and opportunity to show it because of the status in which the umbrella in which they're under.
Yeah, let me tell you about the corruption in New York. I always wondered why the conservative line would have the same people on it as the Democrat line. It's because they sell lines, these parties. They sell the line. And I mean, how could you put a Democrat on the conservative line? So there's a lot of corruption. And I feel like the Libertarian Party here in New York is a true Republican Party without the Republican label and without the corruption that has infested New York politics. People tell me all the time, why don't you run? This is why I don't run. I would never, ever get out of the gate because of the corruption. It's money. It's who you know. Most of it is money. Okay.
Yes.
So for a Democrat to run on the conservative line, now you know, lots of corruption.
Yeah, it's hard to be pure. It's hard to remain with your what you wanted to be and remain that person through the process. And I see that a lot of people get their claws sucked into the people that you loved, and they look what they became. And libertarians try to remain pure. Like Tucker Carlson. There are a few, Greg Gutfeld, where they want small government. They do believe in MAGA at the same time. They hold certain things near and dear to themselves. Rand Paul is an example of someone who is not afraid to speak his mind and sticks by his morals and ideas. And it's hard, very hard, with all the money thrown at you to say yes or no to something. So you're absolutely right. So your crisis of conscience is like many, where they're going to walk in the voting booth and maybe even vote for an R they disagree with, didn't like his speech, didn't like how they acted, didn't like how they looked. But in the case of where we're at today, we have no choice in many cases but to hold our nose and do the right thing, because by doing this, Tracy, it is the effective greatest American insurance policy to ensure President Trump platform for 6 more years and greatness to come for decades. If we don't lock that down, we're jeopardizing the insurance policy of the greatness of what he could produce on and before and for America.
Absolutely. I'm fortunate that my House candidates here that are Republican are really good. So the only crisis that I have is governor right now. And like I said, I've gone to some sharp events. I'm going to speak with Molinaro, and I'm going to, just do the math and see what would be the best choice for the country.
Yeah, doing your research like you just discussed is super important. Now, many people don't do their research and they just choose by, hey, I liked how she or he looked and all that stuff. But if you look at the Walk Away campaign and how they've come over, they researched and found out where their party was founded on and freaked out and said, holy crap, I got to run away, and this is what they're about. And they did their research for the first time in their lives because they based everything else on what they were told. So it's so important to do your research. And if you don't have time, you can catch shows like our show, Patriots Nation. You can catch some of our other shows and maybe get a glimpse of things that may help educate you through the process and really understand what a candidate's about, what their background is, not just what they stand for, but what they've actually accomplished in their lives. And these days, Tracy, many people that have the business acumen and very little political background are shining a lot brighter in more times than ever before. And that's good because it's fresh and no claws have been sunk into them yet. Don't you agree?
I agree with you, Mike. And by the way, we want to apologize for anybody who thought this was going to be a football show about the New England Patriots. I had to make that joke because somebody's thinking we're talking New England football.
And heck, maybe a few more people will watch because of it, because I know that there's a lot of Patriots within that nation as well. That's true, especially the owner.
Absolutely. And, I can't root for the New England Patriots. I haven't watched football in 3 years, but if I was going to root for a team, it would be the New York Giants, who are just absolutely terrible, awful. You can rank on me all you want, but I haven't watched a game in 3 years.
And I understand why, by the way. So our goal, Tracy, and our goal is, everyone has schedules, but we're going to try to bring every week one of these shows where we tackle 2 or 3 topics, do maybe even a rant at the end of something that was on our mind or bothered us, maybe even report on things that have accomplished as the election cycle takes place. And as you get to know us and have means to communicate with us, if you have some ideas in the future, we may even read some of your comments online, things that you may have tweeted, or topics that you might want to tackle. But we really appreciate you watching Patriots Nation. And I want to thank my co-host, Tracy Belmonte, for being part of the great show we had today. Great first show.
Yes, this was awesome. And we definitely will hammer this down, get it an exact day, get an exact time. And like you said, but tell us what you want to see. What do you want to discuss? What are you talking about at the water cooler? Because that's what we want to bring to you.
Absolutely. And we'll have some graphics. We'll get it as clean as possible. But this, we know what we're talking about, and we have a good time doing it. And we look forward to bringing you something very similar next week. So thank you for joining Patriots Nation today. And we will see you roughly in a week. And we look forward to the midterms. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.